Hey, I guess that you have heard the terrible news that over 100,000 people have died in the United Kingdom from COVID-19.
Yes, I heard. It's tragic.
It's tragic, all right. Especially when you consider that every one of those deaths was completely avoidable.
But surely it was the pandemic and COVID-19 that caused them to die?
Every person who died was given the virus from someone else. Each death was directly caused by someone who was carrying the virus, whether they knew it or not.
I guess people just didn't understand how dangerous they were to others.
Well, they were either too stupid, too selfish, or just too busy thinking about their own concerns to realize that they had to put their personal preferences to one side and act differently to protect others. They were loaded guns. And the tragedy is that because of sheer ignorance so many people had to die.
How do you mean?
Look, the general public for the most part are either too busy with their own concerns or too poor and pressured to realize what a pandemic really means to them. In some ways they are like children who suddenly have to be told about nuclear war. If you try to tell them the actual reality, the truth is so terrifying that they can't take it in, and even if they could, the urge to think about almost anything else would mean that they'll simply ignore it. They would just rather think about playtime and playing in the park with their friends.
I guess that when you tell a kid anything like that, you always find yourself trying to make them not worry too much. You end up buying them an ice cream and saying, "Don't worry."
Let's face it, they are kids. They expect their parent to lock that shit down and deal with it.
Of course. That's what parents do. They lock that shit down, so kids don't have to worry about nuclear missiles being stored all around the world or global warming or what time the food bank opens. After all, they are just kids.
Yes, and there is the other self-inflicted tragedy that we still have to get our heads around. People actually voted for these idiots. So now we all have to suffer an incompetent and self-serving government, led by a complete idiot and pathological liar. The complacency and sheer bloody-mindedness of a government, that is so blind to such a glaring problem and then too stupid to plan ahead and act responsibly, is truly staggering. In some ways it shouldn't be a surprise that a bunch of complete incompetents in every other area of government shouldn't have as their specialist subject epidemiology. But that wouldn't really be necessary, if they were half competent or half caring.
I guess in some ways, if you look at the fiasco that was Brexit, it isn't so surprising that the general public might act in a way that was basically not in their own self-interests or that of their neighbors.
Dude, you said it. And it's hardly a surprise that an inept government led by such a buffoon would lead them off a cliff. Boris Johnson's priority has always been self-aggrandizement and political ambition. Because of his unbelievable short-sightedness and reliance on political expediency, he has made decisions that are wholly self-serving to the Conservative Party and himself.
But I thought that they were following the science.
Dude, are you joking me? They wouldn't know how to follow science if their lives depended on it. Does anyone remember the then Conservative Health Secretary getting his kids to eat a burger during the BSE scandal? It's like a scene from Jaws. The danger is out there and obvious, but it's just too fucking inconvenient to acknowledge if it interrupts the summer season and the chance to make some money.
I guess in some ways you would kind of expect politicians to act that way. After all, they are politicians.
Damn right. The bar wasn't set that high for them. Let's face it, the Tory government have a disastrous track record, and if you hear any of those fuckers speak, then your expectations for a caring and well thought out policy drops to the floor like a greasy kebab on a drunken Friday night out in Basingstoke.
Yes, I have to say that nothing that this government has done has come as a surprise.
Sure. The real tragedy is the failure of the press and the scientists to speak out against this level of incompetence. In fact, they are the real fuckers in this monster clusterfuck, as they really should know better.
But surely most journalists went to the same schools and universities as these politicians. Most of them are friends with Boris or married to politicians. After all, I thought Boris Johnson and Michael Gove were both journalists themselves.
Yes. They are hardly qualified to run a country, but they would certainly know how to keep their friends in the press happy.
So I get it. the press let the people down. But it's hardly a surprise. They are as unqualified to understand a pandemic and all that science as the politicians. They wouldn't even know how to ask the right questions.
Exactly. Their ignorance is staggering and is compounded by a journalistic laser focus that ignores all the facts and instead looks for ways to keep the same old story of people dying newsworthy and fresh. They really do love this shit. Tragedy, drama, death, and despair. It allows them to recycle all that spirit of the Blitz bullshit. Hey, let's have some old dude wander around his garden with his medals on. Beautiful. Healthcare heroes and the odd royal story. It's all such easy bullshit to peddle to the public as a distraction, when instead they should be doing their jobs and searching for the truth.
Yes, but what about Hugh Pym, the BBC health correspondent? He always seems very calm and so very polite. Even when he's talking about thousands dying, he seems surprisingly well modulated.
Yes, he's hardly the incisive expert voice we all need to cut through the bullshit and tell it how it is. Another privately educated Oxbridge graduate who studied PPE, like most of the conservative government.
Well, those scientists from SAGE seem very polite too. You know, the ones who the government used to tell us what the lines on the graphs mean. Even the really cool one who looks like Penfold from Danger Mouse, you know, they call him JVT, he is super polite, if maybe a little overtly subservient. I mean, the press love him.
Yes, all company men for sure. Every important role or position of power seems to be suddenly occupied by a friend or colleague of the PM or are cut from the same political cloth. They are either too loyal or too stupid or maybe too concerned about their reputation and pension to speak out.
Well, thank God we have the World Health Organization to speak out and cut through the bullshit. I loved that test thing they did.
Yes, they managed to master the three-word slogan, and who would have thought that you could come up with anything better than get Brexit done?
Yes, fuck the alliteration. Just repeat the same word 3 times. Fantastic.
Yes, but these were the same guys that said wearing a face mask wasn't necessary.
Well, I guess all of this is so unprecedented that no one could have predicted any of this happening.
Fuck no. We only recently had SARS, MERS, Ebola, and then there was the Spanish flu, of course, as a gentle reminder of what a real pandemic looks like. And the recent reports predicting and preparing for exactly this kind of viral outbreak was never on the radar. Fuck, even Bill Gates was predicting this shit over 3 years ago. It's a fucking travesty.
Sure, it's not like we don't do this kind of thing every year by giving the over 60s a regular winter flu jab.
It would be funny if it wasn't so serious. Over 100,000 dead in the UK, the highest death rate in the developed world. And it's not over.
Well, we have the vaccine now, don't we?
Dude, governments are already arguing over supply. And the new variant mutations that we are seeing from Brazil and South Africa and here are just the start. Maybe it's time to Google Spanish flu. That shit came back stronger and more virulent. Again, through sheer human incompetence. It didn't grow wings or develop an IQ of 150. Idiots spreading the virus, that's all it took. Oh, and some truly incompetent governments too. Sound familiar?
Holy shit. Thank God Pooch Perfect is on tonight. I need to rinse this shit out.
Dude, I hear that.
Respect.